Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to UtahJS Lehigh. I'm Andrew. I'm one of the co-hosts. Dano will be here. He's texted me, said he'll be late. Um, but yeah, welcome. Go ahead, eat. Eat it. The food is back. Thanks to my company. They said they are willing to help provide food. It is provided by yeah. It is provided by Anonymy Labs. They make my pseudo app. So because I am part of this company and want to get a little spiel. It's an all-in-one privacy app where everything is end-to-end encrypted. You make profiles where you could kind of organize your day. So, for example, you create a social profile, create a browsing and selling profile. And then it could be messaging, phone, email, browser, and credit cards. Like it's backed by your bank account, but the intention is try to make sure that you manage your own data and that you're not being targeted. That's my little spiel. Um, also, I am definitely open to anyone willing to do presentations. Although, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, okay. I'll follow up with you. Although I will say I am exploring the idea of doing something more of a hackathon night where it's kind of more social rather than like a formal presentation. And the way I'm imagining that a hackathon night would work is like I could just think up like several ideas and just put them on, and then people just go ahead and hack away. Who would be interested in a hackathon night to kind of get like social progress? Yeah? Okay. I'll keep that in mind and I'll try it out. Um, but that's not to say that presentations are a no. Like there are some smart people in the industry and there's a lot that could be learned. There's a lot that could be learned from people that do their own projects. So for example, I was going to get Juan Jimenez to present on how to link certifications to a website. Unfortunately, there was a scheduling conflict, and from what he was briefly talking about, how he set his own custom system up, it sounded really cool, and so I would really want to get him to present. So this is my little spiel for future in the US. Um, so to the content that I'm going to present. Um, so the title of the content that I have is create your own ad blocker. Um, who here uses an ad block prolifically? So, yeah, the ad blockers I specifically use. Oh, hey, here's Dano. Welcome. Um, so the ad block I use like several. I use Pi-hole for a network-wide ad blocker. I use Brave. I use DuckDuckGo. There's a lot of ad blockers that I use very prolifically. And the reason why I use ad blockers is because I don't want to have anyone build an advertising profile on me, like or have these data harvesting companies just put my information on there for anyone to grab. And like for example, I've been subscribed to Incogni and Canary, and their whole role is to remove your data from these data harvesting websites. And I'm honestly surprised of how much like my personal info is at these data harvesting websites. So like, yeah, I would very much love to limit my personal information to get out there. So I've been becoming more aware and kind of alternating my practices of what information I give. I actually have chosen a pseudonym for me. So my name Andrew isn't out there. Stuff like, oh, who's this dog guy? Um, but nonetheless, ad blocking. So ad blockers, um, the primary resource of an ad blocker is a list of URL websites that you want to have blocked. And so when you're building your ad blocker, you need a way to source this information. It so happened to be on at DuckDuckGo's GitHub page. they have open source ad block information that they use in their own system. Um, it's the tracker. Wait, I have um block list. It's this. So tracker block list. When I found this, so they don't just have block list information, they also have a web scraper that they have open source that assembles all this information. There's another one that has a bunch of raw information that they get from their web crawler, but it eventually funnels down to this tracker block list, and this is well, at least what they say is this is what kind of drives their ad blocker. This is the source of the ad. And so looking into the resources that they have provided here, you have version 5 and version 6 that give an orientation of what it's about. If you dive into the JSON file, um, here is all the tracking information that DuckDuckGo has provided. You have specific domains on trackers, who's the owner, the prevalence, the fingerprinting, cookies, categories, rules. And so this I found to be very helpful because when you're wanting to try to ad block, you got to know what you want to block because nowadays there's tracking pixels, there's actual scripts that run, there's fingerprinting the browser, so like your browser could be uniquely identified to you. When I found the tech that explained how to fingerprint a browser, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Because what they do is they like first create a hash off of your um what's it called? Your browser identifier that the which what was it? The user agent, yeah. So they create a hash off of the user agent and then among like IP addresses and such. And it's like, oh yeah, this is this user. Oh gosh, that's what they can do. Oh man. Yeah, so that is definitely a very good thing to block in my opinion. And they also have rules here where it's like, okay, if it's this one, here's the rating on it, and then such. Um, anyway, back to the code. Also, another interesting thing, side note, I'm starting to use Zed. Zed is made by the same people that actually made Atom and not VS Code. Maybe they made both. But what the people behind Zed want to do, they want to try to make the same versatility as VS Code or Atom, um, but make it a bit more efficient because everything here is running off Rust. And I've actually kind of enjoyed that. Like, right. This is actually like half a gigabyte, so it's like, oh, okay. Anyway, um, so in my project, I am using Deno. I am becoming more and more of a fan of Deno. I will admit, I probably should give Fun some more credit. Maybe sometime I'll give Fun more credit. Um, but I'm becoming a fan of Deno because they're using a TypeScript native thing. They're in module compatibility using Rust. I am a fan of Rust. I have taught myself Rust. Um, and then Deno tries to like there's a bunch of reasons why Deno was made. The guy that made Node made Deno, and the guy that made Node said like, "Oh yeah, these are the list of things I regret about Node, and I'm trying to remedy that in Deno." For example, one of them was a security thing. With Node, you could run a Node script, and this Node script could have all sorts of vulnerabilities in it, but you don't know it because there's no security check. Whereas Deno will have security checks and say, "Hey, this script is requesting access to the file system." It's like, oh yeah, sure. Or hey, this is request to your network system. Great. Yeah, sure. And so there is an explicit security system, among other things that were implemented. Um, the other thing I really like about Deno, it's kind of an all-in-one tool set. Bun is also trying to go in that direction where it's a linter and a tester. So it's trying to make the developer experience much more deep. Granted, Node is just fine. Anyway, so back to creating the block list. So creating an ad blocker, you need your own list source. So I have created this function here called clone block list. With the parameters folder name, get URL, sparse checkout folder, and branch. Diving into that. Okay, this part I think is actually really cool, and I would be excited to share. So what I'm going to detail here is essentially ETL, extract, transform, and load. It's a data process to get data what you want. And so that's essentially what it is here. It's like, oh yeah, DuckDuckGo has this list and rating information, and I want to be able to extract it, transform it, and load it. I want to have happen. And in traditional ETL scripts, you bash it. Um, I didn't want to use bash. I wanted to use a tool called ZX, made by Google, um, because they ZX. It's just a JavaScript. Uh, it's a scripting shell. It's hard to describe. What does it say? Bash is great, but when it comes to writing more complex scripts, many people prefer a more convenient programming language. JavaScript is a perfect choice, but the Node.js staying in the library requires additional hassle for using. The ZX package provides useful wrappers around child process, escape arguments, and get sensible. Yeah. So yeah, I found that this is very helpful and very clean because like I could try to do the process, the child process approach, um, but like that gets that's clunky. So it'd be nice to get a pretty clean syntax as well. What ZX does, I don't want to go to their website documentation. What ZX does, they also bundle a whole bunch of utility tools along with it. So change directory, fetch, question, sleep, echo. So they bundle a lot of things with this in order to try to make it so that, hey, you don't have to you use this. So but I mean you heard pretty the a shot. So in here I have I'm essentially making this folder I have here. So block the viewable. Yeah. Block list, DuckDuckGo web version 6, and the JSON files. Um, I get the present working directory, I make the block list, and then I oh yeah, so I made this possible to handle multiple sources from GitHub because Brave is another data privacy company, and they also have their own source list as well. And so I made this to do a for wait loop through those different sources. Um, so yeah, if the folder exists from DuckDuckGo Brave, for example, just go ahead and skip it. Otherwise, go ahead and do a clone, get init, give remote add origin, and then do a sparse checkout. Um, I've known of sparse checkout for a long time, but I never really used it. And this time, I actually think it's a pretty good use case for using sparse checkout because if I could go back to, yeah. So there's a lot of files that's in this repo, and I really just want to use these ones. And so I just target this directory in the sparse checkout and in the git config settings, and then it will just pull down these files. Going back now, going into the duck list, the duck type list. Uh, there's so when it comes to ETL processes, like there's a lot of like documenting. You got to know the data set you're working with, and then you got to do the transformation for the loading that you want. So, for example, I looked through the list and kind of just shrunk these down. So I've got C names, domains, entities, trackers, README, and I just looked at the format and I made that be? I'll try to. um, yeah. So I just looked at the format and then I made corresponding types um to what the raw data looked like so that like I wouldn't lose track of what the data I was working with in my bullet. Um, and then in the duck list function, I pull the domains, entities, and trackers. I call object entries or object values depending on the format of the data. So for example, in the domains part, it's just the domain and the owner of it. And so if I'm going to process the domains, I'm going to need both. So that's where I have entries, whereas with entities and trackers, I just have values and I just take the data out. Going into process entities, I guess this is also where I could sidestep and describe the database thing that I would do. So this is Deno. Deno does have, I think they say like 95 to 99% of NPM is supported. Um, I was trying to use Prisma, um, but it seems like Prisma is in that small tiny percent that doesn't quite work with Deno quite so well yet. So eventually what I resorted to, I, I mean, well, um, so what I resorted to was using the library libsql. Pull that out. Libsql is maintained by the guys at DB SQLite for production. These guys, I think they're actually doing a pretty good job. And I think they're and they're really generous in their database storage. Like usually in the database storage, I find it's like 1 gigabyte. Like, oh, that's but these guys have 9 gigabytes and all the other stuff. I'm like, for the free part, I'm like, okay, I'll check these guys out. And I actually have read a couple of their blog posts, and the reason why they do 9 gigabytes is because they use SQLite. And especially though, they forked their own version of SQLite and call it libsql, and they refined it a little bit to their use case. And so that's why they have like so much a generous feature. But yeah, libsql is just SQLite to the flavor of what Curso is. And so when I need to load this data from DuckDuckGo, I need a place for it to be sent to. So I'm making this file, this database file with SQLite, and I'm creating the seed SQL. I have entity to handle everything in the entity key and domain and tracker. And then these are the ones that I'm selecting from those specific objects. I could expand these more in order to handle it more, handle the raw data more. Um, and then yeah, this is just a Deno script where I could just run it and it'll create the seed and create the database file for me. Um, and then I have the actions. Um, I'm always conflicted about between using an ORM or just straight SQL text. Because like I took a class on straight SQL text and it's kind of makes sense to me. It's supposed to be legible, whereas the RMs like they'll try to be legible. Like some of them do a really good job. Like Prisma actually does a pretty good job, in my opinion. But I was just doing a simple script and I just went with good old SQL lines. So here I've got get entity from the database, create entity. If the entity exists, then return it, else insert the data that I'm pulling out. Same thing with domain. Yeah, pull it out, put it in, check. Same thing with tracker, pull out, and check. and then into the actual file. The process entities one was simple. Just create the entity, and then if the entity returns, be sure to create a domain from the domain that's on the entity. Um, and but to make sure I'm not duplicating things, there is a check to see if the domain already exists. So this will write or not write to the database. And then domains again is just a simple one, create the domain. But I also have a foreign key relationship from the domain to the entity, so that's why entity and domains are kind of tightly correlated to each other. Whereas trackers has a foreign key relationship to entity one. So the trackers one will also have foreign key to the entity. Got the types up there. I am doing for loop in all those trackers that's in the raw file. If there's already entity. Yeah, so these are just the rules I'm setting up to make the add block list. Um, these are kind of the conditions that I want. Like, okay, if anything's rated above 1 on fingerprinting or above a half on prevalence, go ahead and put it in the database. This is where the transform comes in, and you can kind of tailor your add block to your own needs. And then I'm just doing the same thing because there are the rules part. So I'm wanting to handle these as well. That is the sub data part of trackers. Um, you, um, yeah. So there I'm handling it, setting criteria, conditions, and such, and it's being loaded to the database. Um, so I've already ran this previously. Data. Okay. Then DuckDuckGo database. Oh no. Oh no, I guess I'll just have to run it. Okay. Um, so first, Deno task seed. Um, these are tasks. They're similar to just npm scripts. But Deno is the task runner instead of npm is the task runner. So there I'm just running the seed. And then now I'm going to run the uh, harvest trans ETL process. Start. I I put the database file in the database folder and feeding and transforming all the data. Okay. Now I could go and open that file and tracker, browse table. Yeah. So here's all the data that I have linked with it. It's got the foreign keys, and so whenever I'm doing a query, I could do a join. Whenever I am going to write block list. I have not done that yet, but I do have a demonstration to show what you can do once you have made your block list. Do it with the host file. If you don't know what the host file is, it's essentially kind of the first place that your computer goes to before it sends a request out to the internet. Probably like the best simple way to think of. So for example, what will usually be in moment. Okay, so what will usually be in the host file are these things, and they like this is just kind of the standard go-to. Um, but what you can do, like a host file, you could use the host file for any local development, like if you want to customize if you have your own DNS system on your computer and you want to customize your local development, you would put your DNS address here or domain here, and then it would reroute to your local thing. People alive. But to demonstrate, so for example, if I want to block CNN, just put this, just put in the local host. So what the computer is going to do, it's going to come here and see, hey, is CNN.com domain in the host file? Oh, it is. So then I'll redirect the request to this IP address. But as we know, this is a local IP address and there's nothing really serving it. So it's just going to be like, hey, there's nothing here. So I'm going to go ahead and write, exit out. Also need to clear the DNS cache for my computer. So now, if I go here, it should. Sometimes the browsers kind of mess it up a little bit, depending on the browser. So, like, I'll talk about this. This work. Try it because it has a www. Cache. There we go. So blocked everything for the most part. Refresh. Some of you. Storage. Java. This because sometimes browsers will have their own cache. Okay, yeah, here we go. Yeah, so in Chrome, I didn't have any cache set up, and so now I can't access CNN. It is blocked. So that's what you can do when you're doing your extract, transform, and load thing. You target everything to the format of a host file, which is just put it to the local address and then whatever domain it is. Other things you could do. So there's Brave has its ad block, DuckDuckGo has an ad block. What's the there's uBlock Origin. I think this one is really good. There's Pi-hole as well. I also really like. uBlock Origin. It uses WebAssembly, so there's like barely a dent on computer processing power. But with this one, I haven't found it yet. But with uBlock Origin, there is a specific block list format that you could set, and then you could import. Oh, good, I'm almost done. And so yeah, there's a specific block list format that you can load the data you're customizing, and then you can put it in on the format for uBlock Origin and the format for Pi-hole. Um, yeah, so just uBlock Origin or the Pi-hole. Pi-hole I like because you could also set up a Raspberry Pi with it. You set up a Pi VPN, and then you could route your personal devices through the Pi VPN, and it'll just block everything, or anything that you want put in there. There's a big community of making block lists. Let's see if I can find it. GitHub block list. Primary block list project. I use these guys for putting in the Pi-hole. Then like you can load transform it all you want. Yeah, so a bunch of these, yeah. GitHub's a really great place to find your own specific block list if you want custom. Um, yeah, they do have a default that they have. But yeah, it's pretty. That's pretty much the end of my presentation. Any questions? Thank you.